My dad sent me a blurry photo of a fishing rod the same minute I said my vows. That was the moment I stopped pretending my father cared about me. My name's Jake, I'm 29, and 3 weeks ago I married the love of my life. The ceremony was beautiful, rustic outdoor venue, late autumn breeze, Melissa in a dress that honestly made me forget my own name for a second. Our guests looked great. The band hit every note. Everything went right, except the chair that stayed empty, the one in the front row, with his name printed in gold foil on a card that said Father of the Groom. I stared at it through the whole ceremony. That seat had more presence than most people in the crowd. Because that chair reminded me that this wasn't the first time my dad had found something better to do. Let me back up a bit. I lost my mom when I was 12. Sudden aneurysm. 1 minute she was making French toast, the next we were in the back of an ambulance. After that, it was just me, my little sister Emily, and my dad. He was 42 back then. I still remember what he wore to the funeral, faded jeans and a shirt with fishing hooks on it. We all grieve differently, right? Some people cry. Some people shut down. My dad just checked out. He started spending more and more weekends fishing with his friends. Then weekdays. Then birthdays. Then school plays. If something important was happening in my life, I'd look to the crowd and count every face except his. But I held out hope. Every time. Kid logic, you know? Like maybe he just forgot. Or got caught in traffic. Or would walk in right before the curtain call. Spoiler. He never did. Now fast forward 17 years. I've worked hard, got my degree, landed a decent job in cybersecurity, and found someone who actually stays. Melissa's brilliant, fierce, funny, terrifying with a spreadsheet, and way too good for me. She stuck with me through layoffs, panic attacks, a car that caught fire on the interstate, long story, and one brutal Christmas where my dad forgot to show up with the presents for her family. And yet, despite everything, I still wanted him at my wedding. Because stupidly, maybe desperately, I thought this would be the one time he'd show. A month before the wedding, he seemed excited. Texted me photos of cufflinks. Asked if he could give a speech. Even said he was bringing a date, some woman named Trixie he'd met at his bait shop's holiday raffle. I held on to that. Told myself he was finally going to step up. Even paid for his hotel suite and flights. First class, round trip. Just to make sure there were no excuses. The night before the wedding, he texted, "Can't wait to see you, son." I didn't hear from him again until 20 minutes into the ceremony. I was backstage, waiting for my cue. The groomsmen had already walked. My sister had already made a teary speech. And right before I walked out, I checked my phone. It buzzed once. Just once. A photo. Not of him in a suit. Not of him arriving late. Not even a call. Just a blurry shot of a lake, a half-empty beer can on the edge of a boat, and a caption. "Hope it went well, bud. The pike are biting like crazy." I remember my fingers going cold. I stared at the screen for maybe 10 seconds. Melissa's brother tapped me on the shoulder and whispered, "They're ready." And I smiled. I shoved the phone in my pocket. I walked out. I kissed my bride. I partied. I laughed. I shook hands and danced, and even gave a speech that made half the room tear up. But inside, I was quiet. I was still, like something inside me had sat down and finally stopped trying. That's when I realized something. My dad didn't forget. He chose that boat over me. He planned this, just like every other milestone he missed. But this time, I had a plan too. The morning after the wedding, I sat at the hotel breakfast buffet pretending I had slept. Melissa was glowing, reliving moments from the night before, how her grandma danced to Drake, how her cousin threw up behind the DJ booth, how perfect the weather had been. I nodded, smiled, poured coffee. But my stomach felt like gravel. I hadn't mentioned the photo yet. Not to her. Not to anyone. It was supposed to be our first morning as husband and wife. And I was sitting there, wondering how to bring up that my dad, once again, had decided fishing was more important than me. Finally, she noticed. "You okay?" she asked, reaching across the table. "You've barely touched your food." So I pulled out my phone, turned it around, and showed her the photo. She stared at it, blinked once, read the caption again. Then she said, slowly, "Is that a Coors Light?" That's what broke me. Not the disrespect, not the absence, but the fact that my father toasted my wedding with a half-crushed can of warm cheap beer while floating on a lake like some kind of emotional ghost. Melissa didn't laugh. She stared at the screen for a full minute and then said, "He sent that to you while we were saying vows?" I nodded. She shook her head. "I swear, Jake, if he ever pulls this again." "He's not pulling anything," I said, "because I'm done making space for someone who never shows up to fill it." Later that day, my dad finally texted again. "Hey champ, sorry I missed it. The trip kinda came up last minute, you know how it is. Crowd stressed me out anyway. I know you understand. Hope it all went great." Hope it all went great. Like it was a kid's soccer match. Like he had just skipped a brunch. I didn't reply right away. I stared at the message, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The man missed my wedding and had the gall to say last minute. What he didn't know was that I'd already talked to the airline the night before. The same airline I had booked him and his girlfriend flights with, first class, direct to Tahiti. 5-star hotel, private beachfront suite, 7 days of tropical heaven, fully paid for by yours truly. A wedding gift from me to him. Because, again, I had still believed. Right up until the moment I didn't. He didn't know I had access to his flight booking profile. Didn't know I'd received the flight confirmation emails. Didn't know the reservation was still untouched. And now? Now he didn't know that I was logging in. Melissa sat beside me while I typed, not saying a word. Just sipping her tea slowly, watching me pull up the reservation. I'm just looking, I said. She raised an eyebrow. You're not just looking, Jake. She was right. I stared at the screen for maybe a full minute. The cursor blinking over the cancel reservation button like it was daring me. And then I clicked it. Just like that, $4,100 worth of flights disappeared. But I wasn't finished. Because revenge is nice, but precision? Precision is better. I took that confirmation number, rebooked the exact same flights under 2 different names, mine and someone else's. Melissa leaned over. Wait, who are you taking instead? I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my photos and found one from years ago, me and my best friend Andrew, both 15, standing outside my dad's house. The same day Andrew had gotten kicked out for backtalk after asking my dad why he never came to our school events. My dad always hated Andrew. Said he was a punk with no respect. Guess what, Dad? He just got upgraded to guest of honor. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my father. So what are the honeymoon plans? You two leave today, right? I didn't respond. Instead, I took a screenshot of the cancellation confirmation and sent it with just one line of text. Try fishing for respect next time. No punctuation. No explanation. Just the silence between us, finally formalized. I didn't expect silence. I expected yelling. A phone call. Some dramatic, guilt-tripping voicemail about how ungrateful I was. But no, after I sent the screenshot of the canceled flights and the one-liner, my dad went quiet. Too quiet. That's when I knew the message landed exactly where I wanted it to. I thought I'd feel better. I didn't. Not right away. Melissa and I pushed back our honeymoon a few days, partly because of work, partly because I needed time to cool down. But instead of relaxing, I found myself doom scrolling through my old text chains with my dad, trying to spot the moment it all shifted. But there was no one moment. It was gradual. Death by 1,000 passive-aggressive skips. He missed my high school graduation because he couldn't get off work, and then posted photos on Facebook the same day, holding up a 10-pound base with the caption, "Best catch of the season." He skipped my college orientation because the AC on his boat broke. He didn't even meet Melissa until 6 months into our relationship, and when he did, he called her a little uptight because she asked him not to bring a cooler of worms into our apartment. I spent my entire life rationalizing those things, telling myself he's trying. He's just different. He's just not good with emotions. But this time, this was the first time I had real leverage. And I used it. And sure enough, by day 3, the group chat blew up. It started with my sister, Emily. Jake, Dad says you canceled his honeymoon flights? What is wrong with you? I didn't even reply. I just left it on read. A few minutes later, she sent another. He's seriously hurt. Said you blindsided him. You should have just talked to him instead of being petty. Petty? Petty? I sat there staring at my screen, jaw clenched, before typing. He skipped my wedding. That was it. No rant. No emotion. Just the truth. She replied. It was a fishing tournament, Jake. It's a big deal to him. You know how he gets around people. Oh, so now we're calling it a tournament. Classy. I could have left it there. But I didn't. Because when people start rewriting reality to make your pain look like an overreaction, sometimes the only way to cut through the noise is with facts. So I called my Uncle Dave, my mom's brother. He's the only one in the family who ever told it to me straight. Me. Did Dad's fishing trip really come up last minute? Dave. Jake. That trip was planned back in June. He's been talking about it for months. Even bought a new reel just for it. My wedding had been planned for a year. I'd sent save the dates 8 months in advance. He knew the date. He knew the time. He made a choice. And now he wanted to play the victim. I thanked Uncle Dave and hung up. And for the first time in this whole situation, I didn't feel sad. I felt clean. Because that's when I realized this wasn't about forgetting. This wasn't about stress or social anxiety or any of the 1,000 excuses people like him weaponized to avoid accountability. He'd just never seen me as a priority. Not when I was 12. Not when I was 29. And definitely not when I stood at the altar, holding my vows, wondering if he'd come rushing in at the last second. I told Melissa everything that night. Every detail. Every missing milestone. She asked me, if he calls, what would you say? I didn't even need to think about it. Nothing. I've said enough. We went to dinner with friends that evening, and when they asked if I was excited about the honeymoon, I smiled and said, yeah, it'll be even better than planned. Because while my dad sat in his recliner at home, waiting for a plane that would never arrive, I had already booked a replacement. My best friend Andrew and I were flying out the next morning, on the exact flights I'd originally bought for my dad. Melissa would meet us halfway through the trip. She was fine with it. She wanted me to go clear my head, said I deserved it. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed her. We landed in Tahiti just after sunrise. I remember stepping off the plane barefoot, sandals dangling from one hand, breeze cutting warm across my face, and thinking, this was supposed to be his. Andrew didn't ask questions. He knew why I brought him. We'd grown up across the street from each other, and he was there for all the missed birthdays, the school plays with empty chairs, the one middle school football game where I scored and nobody from my family showed up. He didn't ask how I was doing. He just tossed his bag on the hotel bed, cracked open a pineapple beer, and said, so, we gonna talk about what kind of fish your old man caught, or just let it go? I laughed harder than I'd laughed in days. But back home, things weren't quiet anymore. I got a voicemail from Emily. Jake, I don't even know what to say. You humiliated Dad. Do you know how he looked when he found out? He invited his buddies over to pregame for the airport, and then the airline called him. Not even you. He sat there for an hour trying to figure out if it was a prank. You could have just talked to him. You went nuclear. No, Emily. I didn't go nuclear. I just matched his energy. Because here's the thing. My dad didn't just miss my wedding. He chose not to come. And worse, he tried to gaslight everyone into believing it was an accident. That it just came up. A last-minute whim. But what I found out next made it even worse. Melissa called me from home, a little breathless, her voice sharp. You're not gonna believe this, she said. I just got off the phone with your cousin Jenna. Jenna's dad, my Uncle Frank, had been at the wedding. He and Dad were close once. But apparently, they had a falling out a few months back. Something about money. I never got the details. But now, Uncle Frank had something to say. Turns out, my dad did RSVP no to the wedding, just not to me. He told Frank back in July that he was skipping it, called it too much of a production, and said he was tired of feeling like a side character at my own kid's party. He didn't just flake. He deliberately planned to bail without telling me. So all the can't wait to see you texts? Lies. All the send me the address again, and what time do I walk in messages? Performances. I sat there on a white sand beach, phone in one hand, listening to Melissa tell me that my own father had RSVP'd to everyone but me, and all I could do was stare out at the ocean and feel still. Not angry, not sad, just still. Because that was the final puzzle piece. This wasn't about fishing. It wasn't about nerves. It wasn't about forgetting. It was contempt. Contempt disguised as casualness. A quiet, rotting, generational disease. He didn't skip my wedding because he was clueless. He skipped it because deep down, he didn't believe I was worth rearranging his life for. And that was the moment I stopped grieving a relationship that never existed the way I imagined it. I sent one final text to Emily. You want to defend him? Fine. But don't ever ask me to do it again. You know what he's like. You've always known. She didn't reply. Not that night. The next morning, Melissa forwarded me a screenshot. Her mom had posted something on Facebook. Beautiful ceremony, even more beautiful couple. Still can't believe how anyone would choose to miss this. Their loss. Big, big loss. The comments under it exploded. Some family sided with me. Some called me immature. One had tried to say some people just process emotions differently. Sure, some people also just suck at being parents. But go off, Karen. I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't post. I didn't defend myself. I just sat on a beach with my best friend, watched the tide roll in, and sipped something neon out of a coconut. I had nothing to prove anymore. The plane tickets were gone, just like he was. When we got back from Tahiti, Melissa met me at the airport with a sign that said, "Welcome home, emotional assassin." She always knew how to cut through the static. But despite the jokes, the tan, and the cocktail-fueled beach therapy, something still felt unfinished. It wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. It was about the fact that the man who should have stood next to me during the biggest moment of my life never even tried. And everyone else just moved on. Like it was an awkward dinner mishap or a forgotten birthday card. I couldn't. Not yet. A week after we got home, Melissa and I hosted a post-wedding brunch. Just family and close friends. Casual, nothing fancy. But everyone showed up, including Emily. She hugged me tight at the door like she hadn't spent the last 10 days defending our father's absence. Her eyes were tired. She didn't say much. The brunch was fine. Bagels, mimosas, polite laughter. Nobody mentioned the missing father of the groom. Not even once. It was like there was an invisible chair at the table, and everyone had agreed not to look at it. That's when I decided I was going to break the silence. After everyone had eaten, and before people started peeling away, I stood up. I wrote something. I said, lifting my glass. A lot of you know my dad didn't make it to the wedding. I know we've all had thoughts about that. So if it's all right, I wanted to read the speech he was supposed to give. There was a small ripple of nervous glances. Some discomfort. My Aunt Sandy actually coughed into her mimosa. But nobody stopped me. So I pulled a folded piece of paper from my jacket. Not a phone screen. Not an off-the-cuff toast. A prepared speech. And I began. Ladies and gentlemen, today, I want to tell you about my son. The boy who never needed to be reminded to set the table, who took care of his sister when I was too tired, who taught himself to tie a tie on YouTube because I wasn't home. The boy who grew into a man I don't recognize. Not because he's changed, but because I never took the time to look. The man who loves with his whole chest. Who shows up. Who stays. I didn't teach him that. He learned it by growing up in the hollow of my absence. And somehow he still chose love. The room was silent. I looked up, briefly. A few eyes were wide. One cousin looked like he wanted to crawl under the buffet table. But I wasn't done. So here's to the man I never showed up for. To the wedding I didn't witness. To the vows I didn't hear. To the father I never became. And to the son who stopped waiting. I paused, folded the paper, lifted my glass again. To those who show up, even when no one ever showed up for them. And I sat down. No one clapped. But no one moved either. Melissa squeezed my hand under the table. Emily looked like she was about to speak, then swallowed it back. Eventually, the hum of brunch returned. Nervous chatter. Someone popped another bottle of cheap champagne. But the temperature in the room had changed. That speech wasn't for him. It was never for him. It was for me. Because if he wouldn't show up to celebrate me, then I would write the story without him. And this time, I'd do it loud enough for everyone to hear. Later that night, Emily came by alone. We sat on the porch in silence for a bit. No accusations. No apologies. Finally, she said, he cried when he got your text. I didn't say anything. He's not good at this, she added. I noticed, I said. She nodded. I think you finally scared him. He's never been cut off like that before. Not by you. He'll survive, I said. Just like I did. She wiped her eyes. He told me he wanted to make it right. I shook my head. It's not about making it right anymore. It's about leaving it behind. She leaned back in the chair. You really took Andrew on the honeymoon? Sure did. He packed a tux just in case there was a wedding sequel. She laughed through her nose. You're serious. Dead serious. And he ordered room service like royalty. We didn't talk much more after that. She hugged me when she left. Tighter than before. And for the first time in a while, I didn't feel like I owed anyone a performance. 3 months went by. No calls. No texts. No apology. Nothing from him. And for the first time in my life, the silence felt like mine. Melissa and I settled into married life. The dishes piled up less. We started looking at houses. I learned how to cook something other than grilled cheese. We'd have long talks late at night about what kind of parents we wanted to be. The kind that showed up. That was the phrase we kept coming back to. We didn't say his name anymore. Then one afternoon, a plain white envelope showed up in our mailbox. No return address. Just my name, written in shaky, all-caps letters. Inside, a birthday card. Generic. One of those cards you get from the pharmacy rack when you realize you forgot your kid's birthday again. The front said, to a great son. Inside, there was $50 in cash. No message. No signature. No effort. Melissa found me standing in the kitchen just staring at it. Is that from him? She asked. I nodded. She waited. I said nothing. Are you okay? I folded the card, slowly. Walked over to the sink. Tore it straight down the middle. And tossed it in the trash. She didn't ask anything else. She just slid her arm around me and held on for a while. That was the last time I heard from him. I never got a follow-up. No call. No did you get my card? Message. No knock on the door. He just sent it like it was a checklist item and moved on. I think that's when I finally understood who he really was. Not who I hoped he'd be. Not the guy in the stories I told myself. Just a man who never figured out how to love someone unless it came easy. I wasn't easy. I had needs. Expectations. I wanted presence. Stability. He didn't know how to offer any of that. And instead of learning, he avoided. Dodged. Deflected. Fished. Always fishing. And I spent 29 years making excuses for him. Filling in the blanks. Carrying around his empty chair like it was part of the decor in every room I entered. But that card? That was the last placeholder. I let it burn in the trash. $50 in all. A week later, Melissa and I took a walk through a neighborhood near the park. Small homes, big trees, lots of porch lights still up from the holidays. We passed one with a for sale sign that caught her eye. This one's cute, she said. It was. We peeked inside through the window. Hardwood floors, exposed beams. The kind of kitchen that makes you want to learn how to roast something fancy just for the smell of it. And in that moment, I could see it. Us. Not just living here, but starting here. No legacy. No leftovers. Just something entirely new. Later that night, she asked me quietly, "If we have a son, would you ever want to name him after your dad?" And I said calmly, "No." There was no bitterness in it, just a line in the sand. Because legacies aren't built from names. They're built from actions. And I'd rather teach my son how to show up than give him a name that never did. A few months after that, we put in an offer. We got the house. We painted the walls ourselves, even though we were terrible at it. Melissa planted herbs. I hung fairy lights across the porch. We even hosted our first dinner party and burned the garlic bread so badly the smoke alarm broke up the conversation. It was the best night I'd had in years. No empty chairs. No wondering if someone might walk through the door. Everyone who needed to be there was already there. And that, I think, is the real ending to this story. Not the fishing photo. Not the canceled flights. Not the rewritten speech. But this. Sitting on a porch swing, holding a cup of coffee, watching my wife water the plants and laughing at something I missed. Peace. Not given. Not inherited. Just quietly, defiantly built. If he ever decides to call, I won't answer. If he sends another card, I won't open it. If he asks why, well, he already got my answer. Try fishing for respect next time. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.